Well, despite all the chaos that's been going on throughout the season, one thing is for sure, that war is definitely coming, and not all of our characters are, well, as well prepared as they should be. Hey guys, camera for Outlander, Season 2, Episode 9, Je Suis Prest, which I believe is Gaelic for I Am Ready, which is the perfect title for this episode. Now, I was really looking forward to this episode. I mean, last week's, like I said, was slow. It at times felt like a Lifetime movie. That was mainly because of Leary. But this episode was so much better. Even though this episode was pretty much one long training montage, basically, I watched this episode on Amazon because I didn't get to watch it at the time it aired because, of course, of Girl Meets World, because you guys know I just reviewed that. But basically, what Ron Moore said is that he wanted to do an episode that was before the battle, and basically that turned to an entire episode. You know, when you want to do a training montage, and that was this entire episode. And this was a great episode. I really did love this episode. You can tell that we're really gearing up for the final 4 episodes of the season, and I cannot wait for that. I can't believe the end of the season's almost here, but we're almost to the end of the season, and things are definitely starting to get really crazy. The chaos definitely starting to rise, and I definitely really love seeing that. It was also a great episode for Jamie, but let's just get into this episode. I really did love it overall. We start off, we see a mud puddle, 20th century wheels roll by, white men in boots, trapeze through, I think is how you pronounce it. I don't know how to pronounce that word. Traipse through. But I really love the way the episode started, you know, with that, with the, voiceover in the background of the men, and kind of like, I guess, their song that they're singing basically to heighten their spirits and everything. But back in the 1740s, Claire confidently rides in a frame on a white horse, and her narration picks up, and I think that was kind of a scene. If you guys remember, Claire fought in World War II. We saw that in season 1, that she was a soldier then. Even though she was a nurse, she was also a soldier, and she kind of knows what it's like going through war, and she doesn't really want to have to go through it again, but she knows she has to. And this time, Claire really isn't as involved. We see her narration picks up. The gang now compromising Jamie, Claire, and their small band of soldiers from Lord Fraser of Lovett, many of whom desert, head for Crief, and Jamie sends Simon after the deserters with a promise of land if they return. And the plan is to train first, and then later join Prince Charles and his army in Perth. So we basically know this is going to go down. We know how we're going to see the rest of the French characters again. That right now they are training, but they are eventually going to get to Prince Charles and that army, and we're going to see characters, I'm sure, like Mary again at that point. So upon arriving in Crief, they happen upon a grinning Murtaugh, and he gives Claire a warm wink. Their remaining countrymen straggle behind, and there's plenty of work to be done. And I think he gave her that wink because he's the only one there that knows really why they're doing this and knows really what's going on. So there's plenty of work to be done, improvement to be made, and Jamie, Claire, and Murtaugh discuss Simon Lovett's father-son drama with Jamie's corrupt and bitter uncle, the old fox, and Fergus and his mob top pop out, and you can see that he's a lot more eager to tell the tale of woe that was his experience at Murtaugh's temporary ward, a story that sounds like your standard unpaid internship, which I like that, basically Murtaugh gave him this internship. I thought that was kind of cool, and it gives Fergus more to do, and like I said, I'm glad that Fergus is still there, and that he's, you know, still part of this. So Claire gives Fergus a motherly embrace, then the two putter off, and like I said, Claire's really like a mother to Fergus ever since that confrontation that he had with Claire where he confessed to her, you know, what Jack did. She's kind of been this motherly figure towards him that he really needs, and I definitely really did like seeing that. So white shots the Scottish landscape, and people remind us that we are firmly back home, and that was what made this episode even better, is that last week's episode, it felt like an awkward transition. It felt like there was something missing, but this episode really did slow things down, and I'm glad it did, because it felt like we are back in that Gaelic setting. We see a male Gaelic folk singer croons a familiar traditional melody, and it's the folks tune from, basically, I read that it's actually the folk tune from episode 3, The Way Out, when the singer spins a tale of Fairy Hill. So Jamie says something to Claire about that they always come back, and I thought that was a pretty nice scene. I like the way that was done. So the next morning, the Scottish flag whips in the wind. Team Fraser, which is what he's calling it, Team Fraser, I think is what it's called, or Clan Fraser, something like that. They head down the stairs of their lodging, ready for work. Claire is off to manage the baking efforts in support of the troops, because again, like I said, even though she fought in a war, this is obviously the 1700s. Women just, they cooked, they cleaned, and that's something that Claire has to face. I think one of the big things that I love about this, that Claire wants to fight. You can tell she really does want to fight. She wants to do something, but she can't really do anything. She has to kind of stay back here, and she's not really used to that. So Jamie seems much more comfortable, though, within the natural terrain as opposed to the French courts. Because we know in France he really did not feel like he belonged there. But my question is, when he does see those French characters, is he going to have this confidence that he seems to have right now? Because right now he seems very confident. That's something I really did like, is it really did show how great of a leader Jamie, I think, is. And the next morning, we then see Angus and Rupert arrive with hugs and kisses, and basically for Jamie. They also bring news of Willie. The pair informs that he is not dead, but he is married to a girl that's Irish and currently headed to America. So Willie seems like he's going to America, and Dougal joins the happy reunion. Claire gives him a scowl. Of course, we know why, and we know Claire, obviously, the distaste she has for Dougal. So we do get to see Dougal again in this episode. And Dougal gets a lot of focus here. And you can already tell why Dougal, is going to be a problem, definitely. So the boys argue about how many redcoats they fought off at Wentworth. Meanwhile, Dougal lays it on thick to Jamie with a creepy dad like, I'm so proud of you. For glory for Scotland. But Jamie has none of it. He reinforces that despite their men's hearts and Scottish pride, they must learn to fight and soldier. Even though you can tell that Dougal is kind of being creepy about it. Even the petulant child, Dougal isn't adjusting well to playing second fiddle, because we know that Dougal has always been the leader in command. He's always been the one that's led this men. He doesn't know if Jamie can really do it. He's still, and I feel like that was him saying, I'm so proud of you. That was him weakening Jamie. That was him saying, like, you know what, I'm the one that's a leader. I'm gonna, congratulate you, when really I'm jealous of you. I feel like that's really what it was, that he has this jealousy and bitterness towards Jamie, and the way he's going to use that jealousy and bitterness is to basically kind of silently threaten him in that way, which I thought was a kind of a cool way to do it. I definitely like the way that was done. But you can tell that Dougal definitely is really jealous of Jamie. He's not happy that he's commanding, and he wants to be in charge. Obviously, he's not in charge. Jamie's the one in charge, and I like the way that already is a big conflict that we definitely do see here. So Murtaugh then leads the volunteers, drilling them a line of exercise in response to bagpipe signals. I love that scene, the way that he was annoyed by the bagpipes, and Murtaugh was telling the bagpipes to stop. I thought that was really funny. Again, I like that Murtaugh had more to do here, because like I said last week, Murtaugh really didn't have much of anything to do, and you can definitely tell they're trying to give Murtaugh more to do. Again, my only real complaint with this episode is that Murtaugh now seems like he's more just there to say funny things rather than actually have something big to do. But Jamie and Dougal then observe a gentleman in front scoffs and asks for proper weapons. A gruff and grummy Murtaugh explains that after they learn to stand, they will learn to march, and after they learn to march, then they will learn to move, and then they'll get their weapons. And I like that Murtaugh is kind of annoyed by this army, because he doesn't think they have a right to be upset. They learn to stand. He knows that Jamie knows what he's doing. He has as much faith in Jamie as ever, and I definitely really did love that. And as Claire watches, she begins flashing back to her experience as a combat nurse in World War II, because as we know, she was a nurse, but she also did fight, and Murtaugh disappears, and a British offer emerges. She shakes it off. Later, she spots Fergus learning shinty from some of the men, and the image of the boy with a bat reminds her of the young American Yank soldiers playing baseball, and her flashes are washed in sepia tones, and the shell shocker surfaces with a vengeance. It affects those around her, too, like Fergus. She angrily shakes him away from the game, berating him, and I love the way that was done. The way that she was kind of like berating Fergus like that, I thought that was really interesting. So the first of two montages commence in. Murtaugh, Jamie, and Dougal take charge, teaching offense and defense tactics, including sword, knife, and hand-to-hand combat. And basically, I love the songs in the background as well, just the way that was done. So the montage ends with a sunset. Dougal is convinced that if he's not in charge, then he must obviously be a commander of sorts. And basically, he's going to appoint himself to this position because obviously he wants to be in charge. And we know how bossy and just not a leader, I'd say overstepping that he really is, because definitely, if there's anything we can say about Dougal, is that he is definitely overstepping his bounds here. I mean, he does not have any right to do this, really. Jamie's the one in charge. He was the one that was appointed to do this. Dougal is only, I think, doing this because he feels that he should be in charge, which really, I don't think he should at all, and basically, we see he says he must be a co-manager of sorts. He forces his opinion about the men and how, regardless their inexperience, they must push on and soon. Murtaugh says there's no way in hell the troop is ready, and Jamie says that he won't send his people to battle until they're well-trained and disciplined, and this declaration doesn't sit well with Dougal, we can see, because Dougal doesn't see it the way. He thinks they should just train right now, and he doesn't like that Jamie is contradicting him. He wants to be the one in charge, while Jamie is contradicting him and he's not listening to him, and Dougal definitely does want to be in charge. So the group then sets in for a meal. Claire observes Angus choke on some parentage, and she flashes back to World War II. She's in the mess tent befriending two Americans, Corporal Caleb Grant and Private Max Lucas, and chatting about food and home in the English language. And Claire says she's not sure where home is, to be honest, not help for sure. And I like the way that scene was done because, again, Claire doesn't really want to remember these memories, but she can't help but remember these memories because of what she's going through. So back in their room, Claire stares into the fire held in heads, and Jamie asks if she's all right, and she says because she's been very quiet the last few days, and she picks up his Jesus priest cloak pin, but sees the World War II airborne sleeve patch, and she says that she is ready. He apologizes for bringing her there. And basically, Jamie says that he wants her to know whatever happens, they'll get through this and he'll make sure that she's safe. And basically, she responds that she's fine. And she says, to remember the last time she said she was fine, of course, because, basically, she's definitely not fine. You can definitely tell she's not fine. She's trying to keep Jamie, calm and everything, but she definitely is not fine here. But the next morning, Murtaugh is training, Jamie watching, the men march looking bored, and Jamie then says, foolishness in games, that's what they're thinking. They have God on their side. Why should they waste their time on this shite? And Jamie describes them his first war experience in France. That's something I do like for both Jamie and Claire. They both can relate to war because they've both been through it. And he talks about how cocky he was, almost excited, and then the first volley goes. And this time, I don't think he's cocky. He's more experienced. He knows what war is like, and that's why he's being, really just confident about it. He's confident. He thinks he knows that this is going to go down, and I like that. I like that he thinks he knows how this is going to go down. He's been through this sort of thing before, and that's something I thought was really well done here. I really love the way they handled that. I thought they did that really well, and that's something that I really did enjoy about this episode, is that the way that Jamie felt like he knew what he was doing, because he should know what he was doing. So he gives this really great monologue, and Sam Hugon really killed in this scene. He gives a monologue of war, stark and violent, juxtaposed against a glinting hilltop landscape, and he talks about the sound of gunfire sound like rolling thunder across the hills, and by the time the last phase, the second volley is already on its way. He realized it takes more than courage to be an army like that. It takes discipline, and that's the one thing that he has with Dougal. He can discipline Dougal. Dougal doesn't really know how to discipline men, and that's something that Jamie clearly has more experience over. So Dougal and his men crash in man's silence, bodies painted and dressed only in their plaids. They wield their swords like madmen, and Dougal proclaims that that's how they beat the Redcoats with a Highland charge. The men had disengaged, but Jamie snaps them back to attention, and he's not going to let them fool around. He's not just going to let them fight. He needs to really listen to him, and I like that Jamie, again, has control, and he should be allowed to have control, because he's gone through this before. So he agrees with his uncle. The element of surprise would be an asset, but also reminds all they can't bank on. I mean, they don't know how strong the Redcoats really are. They don't know what the Redcoats are going to do to them. We know the Redcoats are very experienced, and that they've been through War II, and basically that they shouldn't just assume that they'll be ahead of the Redcoats, because they don't really know what the Redcoats are planning. And it's really smart the way that Jamie has. His tactics, I think, are something that Dougal doesn't really have. Dougal kind of has a lack of tactics, honestly, and Jamie asks for a word with him, and Dougal tries yet again to pull rank. Jamie lays claim to his army. He says that these are his men, these are his clan, they'll answer to him and no one else, and I like that. I love that Jamie basically said, look, piss off, basically. Piss off. These are my men. You don't get to say what I want to do. Fuck off. I want nothing to do. Not that he wants nothing to do with him, which I think he kind of does want nothing to do with him, but at the same time, he's not going to tell me he wants nothing to do with him. But basically, I love how assertive Jamie was. Now, he doesn't say completely fuck off, but basically that's what it's implied, basically, that he does, in fact, want him to leave him alone. I love the way that was done. Really good stuff there, and again, I like that Jamie's not letting Dougal get involved. He's doing what he wants to do. He's not going to let Dougal tell him what to do, and that's something I definitely really did love with Jamie in this episode. So, because, obviously, Dougal knows he's not getting through to Jamie, he tries to use Claire, and he slithers up as she makes a concoction over the fire, asks her to talk to Jamie on his behalf, because, again, he wants to make sure that he's involved with this, and it is, I think, going to become a problem. Dougal is just stirring up trouble, and when she refuses, he plays his hand at blackmail, threatening to tell Jamie of their prior agreement to marry in the event of his death, because you remember, that's what they agreed to, that they're going to marry if something happens to Jamie, and He wagers that she hasn't told him all the gory details. It's a non-issue as she did in fact tell Jamie everything after his rescue and resurrection, and that's something that she hasn't told Dougal at all, mainly because she doesn't really like Dougal very much, and we know she doesn't really trust him. So Dougal called Jamie a better man than he. Truer words have never been, and I like that he admits that. He does say Jamie's a better man. He knows that he's not really a good man, and she says the truer words have never been spoken. She goes on to call him out as a narcissist, and basically she says, so please stop trying to convince everyone of his patriotism. It's tedious, and tells him to fuck off. Basically, he isn't, he needs to just let Jamie do what he wants to do. Jamie clearly knows what he's doing. He has no right to get involved, and this is not his army. This is Jamie's army. Jamie's going to train the men. Dougal had no business being there, and really, he is really overstepping his bounds. So Dougal admits to loving his reflection, but proclaims his love for Scotland and the Stuart King, and this sieges into the second montage of the men showing improvement and raises swords in unison, and the next scene opens with the soldiers at Target practicing under Murtaugh's strict supervision. They need more work, and you can definitely tell they're not fully trained yet. Jamie then knows that Claire is not herself. Murtaugh agrees. He advises Jamie that it's going to take more than asking it to pry it out of her. And Murtaugh then says that Claire usually doesn't beat around the bush. She speaks her mind whether, you want to hear it or not. Because really, that's true. I mean, Claire says how she feels. She doesn't just keep things in. But obviously, Jamie was not there when she fought in that war. So that's something that Jamie can't really relate to. He can, but in many ways he can as well. So the next scene opens with the soldiers at Target. So basically, then we see Angus's feet are worse for the wear. Claire lectures him on proper foot cleanliness and how to avoid trench foot, which of course that was something they didn't know back then. I mean, trench foot, it's really disgusting, honestly. I don't like learning about it in history class, but it's something that did happen, and it's something that these soldiers need to understand. The trench foot is going to happen. You are going to get trench foot, but they obviously did not understand the way trench foot worked, and that's something I definitely did like, is that back then they didn't really understand trench foot. And he says it's nothing, he'll bear it, it's not a big deal, and she goes further, explaining the dangers of poor hygiene and how it leads to amputation. And again, this is something that they don't understand. They don't have that medicine yet and things like that. So we see another flashback. She's back in World War II, being mocked by a front row boy. She gives Angus, and she basically tells him to fuck off as well. And I like the way that these war flashbacks are making her get more and more angry. I love the way that was done, because it was an angry time, and it has really affected her, and you can tell she has a little bit of PTSD from it, which I think is interesting. And it's like kind of low-key PTSD. It's not complete PTSD, but it's kind of low-key. So it's definitely there, he's just not always there. So the men then sit around the fire pit. Rupert tells a dirty joke. Dougal appears with a gift of new troops, and Jamie is dumbfounded and disappointed. And according to Dougal, they are volunteers, but Jamie scares them straight, and he says this is treason. If they fall, all those who support the Stuarts are likely to end up on the scaffold. He gives them the option to leave of their own volition. All of them go. Jamie scolds Dougal and doles out the consequences. He and his men will suffer sentry duty. He also relieves the current guards, Ross and Kincaid, of all of their posts, and arrests them for allowing a new group to pass unquestioned sentence to a punishment of 6 lashes each. Murtaugh wields the strap, and Claire is not at all okay with this. Cut away to muskets loading. Claire carries a basket across the hall while Jamie trains his soldiers, and as the guns fire, her duress increases. Jamie notices. She hyperventilates by the wagon before passing out, and another flashback occurs. This time she's driving an army vehicle on a bomb-laden road. The Jeep explodes. She wakes in the crater. Ears ring to the sounds of men screaming. One American soldier is with her. German tanks are coming. She offers to retrieve the injured soldier. Her companion instructs her to stay put, and her American friend is shot as he attempts to save the other. She spends the remainder of the night self-soothing in the fetal position, listening to Please for Mama. Another American finds her in the morning. Now, I will say there were some points where I'm like, why couldn't we just have a whole episode of flashbacks? But honestly, I would not want that. It would slow things down. This is not a show we need that. Things are already kind of slow with this training montage. We don't need it to be that way. But it's not slow as well, because you can really tell this is affecting Claire. She's remembering things that she doesn't want to have to remember, but they did happen in her life, and she hasn't had to flash back to them till now. I'm sure it's been in the back of her mind, but now that they're back in war, I think she's really worried about what's going to happen. Of course, we know what ends up happening to Jamie, so that's why this is even sadder, and that's why this is even, I think, a bigger deal than ever, because we know what's going to end up happening to Jamie. We know what Jamie's going to go through, and we know that Jamie's going to die. So Claire then wakes from her flashback to Jamie. She finally tells me, because obviously she was keeping it inside, and I like that she finally told me, because sooner or later she had to tell him, and she finally gets to tell him here. She tells him of the war experience that plagues her still, but she also comes to terms with the situation. Jamie offers to take her home to Lallybroch. She says no, claiming that if she goes back, it'll be just like it was in that ditch, powerless like a dragonfly in amber, which of course is actually the book that this episode is named after. Jamie, and the season in general. I think the finale, honestly, is called Dragonfly in Amber, which I think is honestly the reason why the book is called that, because Claire is kind of powerless in this situation. Claire was the one that obviously was the one that wanted to get the situation done, but now she's kind of powerless, and Jamie promises that regardless of what happens, Claire will never be alone again. He kisses her, and she says for 2 years she's tried to stop this war from coming, and now it's here, she's not really sure if she's ready to go to war again. And I love the way that was done. I love that Jamie told her, look, it's all going to be okay. And even though, again, he is, as powerful as he is, he still loves her, he still cares about her, and he'll make sure that everything does go right for her, and that she doesn't have those horrible memories come back to resurface again. Love the way that was done. Really good stuff there. And again, I love those scenes between Claire and Jamie. Some of the best in the show, and probably one of the best scenes this episode. So while Jamie relieves himself against the wall, he's attacked from behind. He successfully defends himself, breaking the assassin's arm, and after dragging him into the light, we learn from the perpetrator is a young 16-year-old English boy carrying a letter to the British officer. Obviously, he's an English spy who was trying to get information, and he claims to have recognized Jamie from his wanted poster as Red Jamie, the traitor, which is interesting. I mean, this is something we didn't know about, and clearly Jamie's known as a traitor there. Jamie, obviously, I think it's because Jamie left France. I think that's the main reason. But Jamie interrogates him under threat of torture, starting with his arm. He heats his blade over the fire, intimidating the youngster as he asks of his traveling party's direction, size, and camp location. And, I mean, the way that he's done, you can tell that Jamie knows this guy's bad news. And Claire interrupts, offers a simple method of extraction for information. She pretends to be a British prisoner of Jamie, the Scottish barbarian, offers her body in exchange for the boy's life, because clearly she's trying to see, really how she can come across, how she can get this guy to reveal information. And again, this is a young boy. So Jamie plays along, groping his wife in front of the lad, and it really works. And he says his name is William Gray. And Jamie, now I feel like that name is important, but I don't know who he really is. So Jamie instructs his men to take the boy towards his camp, tie him to a tree 1 mile away for his friends to find him in the morning. And if he's lying, they must cut his throats, which he actually is, because I believe his name is actually John Gray, but he's calling himself William Gray. So Jamie knows that the boy is truthful. He then pockets his sword, tells the boy that he gave up his life. He hopes to use it well. Young Gray promises a debt of honor in the future, and once discharged, though, he vows to kill Jamie. So it's really making us wonder, because of the fact that this is what Jamie went through and everything, we know that Jamie's gonna die. Is William, or whatever his name is, John, William, whatever, is he going to be the one that ends up killing Jamie? That's really my question, is who is going to end up killing Jamie? Is he going to be the one that possibly does that? I'm not really sure, but I'm very intrigued to see if he does end up killing Jamie, because I think that's going to be very interesting as well, if he actually does end up getting his revenge on Jamie, because I feel like he is going to play a major role. He's not playing a major role yet, but it really does seem like because I'm showing him here, he is going to become a problem later on. So, because Dougal's men were on watch when Gray snuck through, Jamie reinforced the disciplinary measure, more lashes, and Dougal then disrobes, but this time so does Jamie. He assigns 6 lashes for carelessness, plus an additional 12 to himself for the fires. Murtaugh will do the job, and we watch that Jamie receives 8 whips from the business end of Murtaugh's belt, which honestly was hard to watch, because we know how much whipping and lashing that Jamie's been through, just because of what Jack did to him. So I'm like, why would you do that to yourself, Jamie? But I get that Jamie thinks he is as much at fault as Dougal is. So shortly after they slip into the British camp and shenanigans ensue, much to his chagrin, Dougal must stay behind as sentry duty calls, and he really can't do anything here, which I really did like seeing. The raid is on, the men infiltrate the British camp, steering bolts and wagon wheels. We see them again later, lighting up the night sky in a bonfire. Jamie arrives home happy and camouflaged in warlike paint, and basically you see right here that they are starting the battle. Obviously, it's not fully commencing, but definitely it's starting. You definitely see that here, and that's something I definitely really did enjoy. So Jamie then arrives home and camouflaged in more like paint. He wakes Claire, tells her story of his commando raid, and he's quite pleased with himself. Though feeling amorous, he advised her to get dressed. They need to be on their way. As the British can't find their missing wheels and post them using in the morning, they obviously need to leave because the British are going to find them. And he says that their success tonight was because of her selflessness. And that's really something that Claire has. She's always very selfless, and she cares a lot about other people, and she's willing to put her safety, over her safety over other people's. And she really doesn't care about her safety. She's always willing to help other people, instead of her. So the next morning, the soldiers march ahead with Jamie and Claire and lead on horseback. It's a slow trudge, but one filled with close-ups of our favorite characters. And as they arrive at Prince Charles Stuart's encampment, Jamie throws Dougal a bone, and he says, "Do the honor, ride ahead, announce the arrival to Prince Charles Stuart's." And I love the way that was done. Trusting in Claire's knowledge of history, Jamie leads the Jacobite army into a crucial battle with that's obviously the plot for next week's episode. But that is how the episode ends. They're going to meet up with Prince Charles Stuart. That's how the episode ends. And I think it was a perfect way to end the episode overall. But let's get into this episode, my predictions for next week. So overall, guys, I thought this was a much better episode than last week. I mean, there was a lot more going on here. There was some really good stuff between Jamie and Dougal. I like the clashing going on between those two, but I like that Jamie handled it as well. He felt like a true leader. He felt like he knew what he was doing. And it's not that Dougal does know what he's doing, it's just Jamie has more reasons to, help and train these men than Dougal ever does. I don't think Dougal doesn't have his reasons, because he does. Obviously, he's been in charge and things like that. He's Jamie's uncle. He feels that he's more experienced, things like that. But Jamie's the one that's gone through more than he ever has, and because of that alone, I think he has more reason to train these men. You definitely do see that. I really did like how that was handled, and I think they did that really, really well. And the way that Jamie wasn't a dick here, you really just see him as a leader, and the fact that he acknowledges that he was kind of a dick, I thought was really good. Let's talk about Claire, though, because probably some of my favorite sequences this episode were the war sequences and the way that's affecting Claire. I mean, it's very interesting overall. I think Jamie does want Claire to get involved, but of course, because of the time period, that really wasn't a thing back then. Women stayed, they cooked and cleaned, but is he going to give Claire more to do? I'm not really sure. Maybe Claire is going to change things. I mean, we see in the promo next week she doesn't want to rewrite history, but maybe that's what's going to happen. I also could see Claire possibly leading this rebellion. I mean, even though Jamie is, I feel like he is going to give Claire something to do, and we'll have to see what that something is. What it is right now, we don't know, but I do feel like Claire is going to be giving something, significant to do, but I just don't really know what that significant thing is going to be. That's something that I'm definitely interested in. Now, as far as Gray goes, we're definitely going to see this guy again. I mean, Gray, clearly, like I said, he called revenge on Jamie. He's going to get his revenge at some point. I'm wondering if he is going to end up killing Jamie, because obviously, he said, if things don't go, basically, he says that he's going to kill Jamie at some point. We don't know what's going to happen there. Is he going to find out what's really going on between Claire and Jamie? I mean, really, that's something that doesn't seem like a big deal, but I feel like we are going to see Gray again. We're going to find out what's going on there. Jack's obviously going to find them. Now, they're confident the Redcoats aren't going to find them, but we don't really know what's going to happen there. And also, Prince Charles Stuart. I mean, that's going to be very interesting as well, because obviously Jamie's leading this rebellion, but Prince Charles Stuart is the one that they're going to find him. They're going to his encampment and everything. My biggest question is, are the French characters, like Mary, like Louise, I remembered her name finally, I didn't remember her name last week, but I remembered her name this week, are they going to integrate into this story? Are we going to see them again? I mean, I would think that we would. We focused so much on them in the first half of the season. I would think that we'd focus on them again before the season ends. I definitely think that would happen. It would just feel like closure to the season. I think that is going to happen. We'll have to see what happens with that. But like I said, I think Dougal really is going to become a problem. He might not be a big one now, but I feel like as the season goes on, he is going to be a big problem. I feel like definitely something is going to happen with him. I don't know if he's going to die necessarily. I see a lot of casualties, definitely. Basically, they've already said that they're turning this into a war show, which honestly I do like, because that's something that books can't really categorize. I think that's something that books can't really do. I mean, you can visualize a war, you can read about a war, but it's much more interesting to watch a war play out than read about a war. I'd much rather watch a war than just read about a war. I mean, who wants to read about a war that happened? Oh, this happened, there were a lot of casualties. Yeah, I want to see those casualties. I mean, obviously I don't want to see people die, but I feel like by getting us back to Scotland, a lot of these characters are going to die, like Angus, Rupert, characters like that. I think they're going to die. I don't really see them living. I like that Murtaugh has this role to do as the one that's like whipping people and the one that's yelling at people. It's perfect for Murtaugh to do. We know one of his best things, and I think one of the best things they do with Murtaugh is just have him complain all season. I think it's really good to see. Obviously, he's back in his usual setting, but he's still just as annoyed. I like seeing that, and I like that he's remaining very loyal to Jamie and Claire. Of course, he knows what they're going through, and I'm wondering if anyone else is going to. That's something else I think is going to be very interesting. My other big question is Master Raymond. Are we going to see him again before the season ends? I don't really know. Are we going to go back to France? I mean, obviously, we know we're in Scotland right now, but are we going back to France? Is that where we're headed? I don't really know. I mean, that would help me with my intro because, like I said, I told you I can't change it, so that would be a good thing if we're going back to France. You know, that my intro would be relevant, which it's not right now because they changed it back to the Scotland intro. I will say that something I definitely did feel. I feel like we were back in Scotland. It didn't feel abrupt in this episode. It felt like we needed to be back in Scotland. It felt like it made sense why we were back in Scotland. It didn't just feel like, oh, we're randomly back in Scotland. You know, let's see what's happening in Scotland after all this time. I definitely did like seeing that. I hope we see more war flashbacks, though, what Claire went through, because it's one of the most compelling things, I think, all season, really. What Claire's gone through, I mean, we know everything she's gone through, and then now she is thinking about war. It's crazy. I mean, we know she left, France to get away from all the drama, and now she's facing more drama, and this girl just can't get away from drama. She really can't. I mean, it's really drama city for her, really. I think the 1700s is the drama decade for her, really. She can't get away from it, and I don't really know what's going to happen with that. I like that she said Dragonfly and Amber, though, because that's what the book is called. I think that's really interesting, and Claire really is laying low at this point, but like I said, I'm wondering if she is going to get involved. That's something I'm definitely interested in, and also, how's this whole situation going to play out? Because we know, like I said, Jamie does end up dying. I don't know how he ends up dying, but I think that's something that the show is definitely going to tell us very soon. How he's going to die, I don't really know. I think that's going to be very interesting. But overall, guys, I'm glad you guys saw this episode. This was a great episode. I really loved it overall. I think it was really gearing up for the last 4 episodes of the season, which looks epic. It looks like it's going to be a lot of damage. There's going to be a lot of characters dying. It's going to be very sad, but I think it's definitely the necessary direction to take things into, and I like that Claire even said that she didn't really want to start a war, but now there is a war coming. Don't really know what's going to happen there, but let me know if you guys saw this episode. I absolutely love this episode. Thought this was one of the best episodes of the season, probably, and I will see you guys in my next video, which will be for, I think, a review of the last 4 episodes of The Girlfriend Experience, because I know I am very behind on that, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.